future.
What's next? What you want? 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 What's next?
Sun feels like gold on my skin. I win. Another day to begin with my friends. Chasing the bag with a grin. Are you in? Let's do this for real. Don't pretend it's a better future.
It's no surprise. I'm seeing it's all in your eyes. Yeah, they've been glowing real bright.
It's a better future.
As clear as the sky. I know if you're down to ride, then you'll be fine.
It's a better future.
What's next? What you want? What's next? What you want? What's next? What you want? What's next?
Take it in hand, understand it's a goal. You've always been there and prepared for the show. You're bright like lights, it's divine when you glow. You remind me to shine, don't you know? It's a better future.
It's no surprise. I'm seeing it's all in your eyes. Yeah, they've been glowing real bright.
It's a better future.
As clear as the sky. I know if you're down to ride, then you'll be fine.
It's a better future.
What's next? What you want? 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 What's next?
Sun feels like gold on my skin. I win. Another day to begin with my friends. Chasing the bag with a grin. Are you in? Let's do this for real. Don't pretend it's a better future.
It's no surprise. I'm seeing it's all in your eyes. Yeah, they've been glowing real bright.
It's a better future.
As clear as the sky. I know if you're down to ride, then you'll be fine.
It's a better future.
What's next? What you want? What's next? What you want? What's next? What you want? What's next?
Take it in hand, understand it's a goal. You've always been there and prepared for the show. You're bright like lights, it's divine when you glow. You remind me to shine, don't you know? It's a better future.
It's no surprise. I'm seeing it's all in your eyes. Yeah, they've been glowing real bright.
It's a better future.
As clear as the sky. I know if you're down to ride, then you'll be fine.
It's a better future.
What's next? What you want? 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 What's next?
Hi again. My name is Summer L. Williams, and my pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the Associate Artistic Director here at Company One Theater. Welcome to Season 2 of the Better Future series. If you're joining us for the first time, the Better Future series is a multi-part digital gathering bringing us together with Boston's artists, community leaders, and policymakers. This season on the Better Future series, we are building on the conversations begun in the summer of 2020 to delve deeper into the needs of the often ignored communities in Boston and across the country. This season, we continue to celebrate the vibrancy and the multiplicity of Black lives, experiences, and narratives as we highlight ways to build and invest in our communities despite the systems that are actively trying to tear us apart. And please allow me to say on all of our behalves, we must stop white supremacy. Along with our panelists, we are joined by Kinsey, she, they, and Elaine, she, her, hers, who will be our ASL interpreters. Before we get started, we'd like to begin by acknowledging that Company One Theater produces work in Boston, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Wampanoag, Nipmuc, and Massachusetts people. We affirm that it is important to understand and honor the history of the Indigenous land that we occupy, while recognizing that this acknowledgement is insufficient and does not undo the legacies of violence and displacement of Indigenous people. We aim to take a small step toward a future of decolonization and reconciliation. Thank you. All right, friends, let's turn those cameras on. I'm excited to get our conversation started and introduce our panelists. So we have Chastity Bowick, Director of the Transgender Emergency Fund, Athena Vaughn, Transgender Healthcare Access Coordinator at Fenway Health Institute, and TVT, rapper, wordsmith, and performer, fantastic actor. To read their full bios, visit companyone.org/betterfuture. We're gonna drop that link in the chat. And now I'm going to hand it off to my girl, Jasmine, who's going to kick off our discussion for the evening. During the conversation, please feel free to ask any questions you may have for our panelists in the comment section. Thank you so much. Jasmine, it's yours.
Thank you, Summer, and thank you to our panelists for being here, and welcome to episode 2 of the Better Future series. I'm so excited to have you all here and to delve into this conversation. And before we get started, I just wanted to say that all of our panelists, just a reminder that all of our panelists' pronouns are listed under their names. Just as a reminder to use the correct pronouns in when referring to our panelists. And also that if there happen to be any trolls or any comments in the YouTube feed that are inappropriate, we have a team that is on it and will make sure to eradicate and get rid of any hate that's in the comments. Now, getting all of that housekeeping out of the way, thank you so much all for being patient with us today. I want to start off by saying that today we are speaking specifically to the marginalization of Black trans lives. And it is so important to speak to this community directly. And I just wanted to talk to all of you panelists about why it is so important to focus on this community and like what kind of brought you to kind of having activism in your work and all your different intersections. So whoever wants to kick us off, tell us a little about yourself and how that resonates with you.
I guess I'll start. Good evening, everyone. Chastity Bowick here, she, her, and hers. I guess I'll start us off. Thank you again for having me. And I think for me, the importance on focusing on our community is, it goes back to me and the things that I needed when I was in the beginning of my transition. I didn't have anyone who was going to guide me through the direction of navigating these waters, especially in Boston, the overt racism that is here, especially for trans folks. So I got involved to the work because I wanted to be the person that wasn't there for me when I was going through my struggles of homelessness, survival sex work, survival drug use. And so it was very, very important for me to be that person that can give back to the community and help guide other women, trans women like myself, who are in similar situations or even worse situations. But that also goes on the other side as well, is making sure that what's going on politically around us, especially in our state, is going to allow us to help our people.
Hi, y'all. Trap Beat Tranny, TBT for the sissies, they and she pronouns. And yeah, I think it's really right in the question, right? Like this idea of the reality that Black trans folks are marginalized. And when we talk about marginalization, I think a lot about centering, right? Who are we centering versus who we aren't centering? Because the people on the margins are the people who are furthest from the center, right? And so when we talk about justice movements, a lot of time we talk about wanting to center those who are at the margins. That's what that is. You know, we in any justice movement need to be centering the people who are at the margins, because we know that being at the margin comes with the most amount of harm as well. And so there is an active like sense of constant, like, people think that whatever is happening outside of them and not happening to them like personally in their own everyday experience isn't a real thing. But there are so many things that are daily to just existing in a world that has a problem with Black trans people. Not that existing as a Black trans person is a problem. That's not the problem. The world is. And so when we talk about these things, I'm always thinking about how do we take this idea of whoever is at the center and just blow that up so that we can reform with a new center, and that center being the people who were formerly on the margin, because those are the people whose needs that we need to be addressing. Those are the people who the system it's making it seem like we're forgetting them. And in reality, no, you're not forgetting us. The system is actively choosing not to give us stuff. So
yeah, so I totally agree with the both of them. So especially piggybacking off of what Chastity was saying, talking about not being able to have those resources when we were first transitioning. I remember there was a time where when you would hear the word no, or we could not help you, or you don't qualify for what it is they were offering, it's the easiest way just to give up. And having the advocacy, having the advocates and people to fight for you that's actually going to stand up. And even if they hear the word no, still push the margin, still push the barrier to be sure that you receive and get the access that you need. So it's just realizing that sometimes we just need people in our lives that are just, no matter what they hear as far as no, or they can't, they're still going to push, they're still going to fight, they're still going to argue, they're still going to advocate for those needs and necessities that you might need. Being marginalized, being a trans woman of color, and growing up in this world, and just realizing that. So, for instance, I remember somebody was telling me that they want to support trans resistance in the march and stuff this year, and that they wanted to support Boston Pride in their march this year as well. And I said, you cannot do that. You can't do that just for the simple fact of what it is that we are fighting for. No disrespect to Boston Pride, but that's one of the things and entities that we are fighting against because of the source of what they stand for or stood for. And so the response was, oh, but they're changing. And my response back was, change can't become until the hatred, the supremacy is actually uprooted, not just cut down, because it can still grow back, because it's not killed at the root. If it's still there, if it's still rooted, if it's just cut down, it grows back. It has to be uprooted. It has to be killed from the root. And that's the only way that change can happen.
You said that so lovely, Athena, about, yeah, you got to get to the root of it. That was so lovely. Speaking of trans resistance MA, for folks who are watching, Athena and Chastity were co-founders in last summer when there was the height of many protests, and thinking about Boston Pride and all the Black Lives Matter protests are happening, and how you all were able to found this organization and lead this protest. So I want to show a video so everyone can get a sense of what we're talking about, and see images and videos from the protest last year. So I'm going to kick it over to our production manager, Mads, to show us that video, and we can talk some more about trans resistance MA in a second.
We don't get it if we don't get it. So we came here today to spread a word.
Let's stop letting the opposition divide us and conquer us. The LGBT people are our people, and our lives will always matter. Let's come together and show
Loud
the world.
enough! Be loud enough! Be loud enough! We understand that they say that all groups are not bad, but guess what? When black people are accused of something because of their color, everybody gets backlash. And because no one says anything, that is why things keep happening. So as your police brothers and sisters, when you see shit happening that should not be happening, it is your job to speak up. Who do you serve? Who do you serve? Who do you serve? Who do you serve? Who do you serve?
When we come together as a village, when we come together as a family, this is the outcome. So we must vote. We must do our due diligence as trans, as black, as gays, as LGBTQ, as supporters, our rights to do what we need to do to get him out of office.
And so this is for you all. This is for those who feel like or live in fear because they don't know what tomorrow looks like. Look around you, left to right. This is what tomorrow looks like. Now that we're here, peacefully, to protest, for black trans lives, the police came out with sticks. But we will still be peaceful. Let's go.
Yes, amazing, amazing, amazing. Athena and Chastity, can you both kind of speak to how trans resistance came to be and just the history of the org?
Sure. So the funny thing is, when I met Chastity, has it been 8 years now, maybe a little longer? She was my supervisor at a program at AAC called Transcend. And, you know, when you grow up as a kid, you feel like, you know, when you meet certain people, you're going to clash with them and stuff like that. And so I was a keynote speaker at the Bay Rust and Breakfast, and she was receiving the Belinda Dunn Award. And I'd heard so much about how statuesque she was and just how she looks like a model and stuff like that. And so at the breakfast, I ended up meeting her, and we probably briefly spoke for a few seconds, but I didn't know she was going to be my supervisor. And so when I came into the office on that Tuesday, I saw her and I was like, oh, and we literally clicked. So she always talked to me about her dreams and aspirations to do a march on behalf of trans people, to do a protest and stuff like that. And something I said to her is, you know, if that's what you want to do, I got your back. You let me know what that looks like. I support you because I've never done one. And so we kept talking about it and figuring it out. And so one year we said, next year will be the year that we're going to do that. After going to DC and going to that march and stuff like that, we said, next year will be our year. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. And then COVID happened. So it was like, how are we going to do this march now? COVID's here and stuff like that. And so it's a thing about how God or the universe, where we believe in works. And so one day I was reached out to after the killings, and then after Boston Pride did what they did. To make a long story short, there was a newsletter going out on behalf of Boston Pride, and in the letter was a support to Black Lives Matter. Before the letter went out, it was sent to the board, and the board removed the piece about being a support to Black Lives Matter and changed it to being a support to Blue Lives Matter, meaning cops. So it was a big uproar. I was reached out to ask if I could do a video in support of Boston Pride. I explained to Boston Pride that I would do this video, but it wouldn't be in support of them. So I was reached out to by this gentleman who said that he wanted to put on a march and a vigil and wanted me to be the keynote speaker. I said, okay, cool. So I'm in this Facebook inbox group that we're all in. We're all talking about when we're doing it, when it should be done, stuff like that. And then the next morning I woke up and he sent a message to the group and said, you know, as a white gay male, I think that we're always the face of something. We're always, you know, helping and supporting and taking and stuff like that. And I think it's time that we give back to our trans people and allow them to be the face of what belongs to them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a back seat And I think that a trans person of color should be in charge. So he says, Athena, you're in charge. And then he leaves the group. And so I'm looking at the inbox. I said, now wait the hell a minute. I ain't never put together no march. I ain't never put together no, hold on here. So Sasha, good friend, who works for the city of Boston and also is the president and director of Mass Now, reached out to her, brought her on board to help. And then I, of course, immediately reached out to Chastity. Like, hey, this is what's going on. Let me tell you, right now we already got over 100 and something people that's on board and want to support. They want to raise money for the Transgender Emergency Fund. You've talked about doing a march, sis. Let's do this together. Let's bring I want you to bring your ideas, all that stuff. So I added Chastity into the group. And so after everything happened, I remember I don't know if it was at the march, sis, or do our conversations in the group that we had that I brought up the name Trans Resistance and we all said yes. It was one of the two. It was either at the march or in the group, and that's how the name came about. As far as the organization itself, myself and Chastity could see that there was a need, and people kept asking that this be something that's done yearly. Not because we don't need Boston Pride, but because Boston Pride was not doing its due diligence to the community. It was not for us, by us. The board does not represent what our community looks like. The people who are stepping up are not looking like what the community looks like. They're not actually doing the full community work that they claim to be doing. And so that's partially part of the story. And if Chastity wants to add to that, she can as well.
I think you pretty much summed it up, but just seeing the video brought me chills again, because it's just a very monumental thing to be able to bring your community together and supporters of your community together to just, speak your truth and speak what changes that need to be made. And then just knowing that after the march, it didn't stop there. Some of the things that we said we wanted to do and want to change, like we continue to work towards those things for the trans social justice movement. For an example, after that Trans Emergency Fund signed on with the National Women's Law Center in Washington, D.C. to actually sue the former White House administration as they were trying to strip away certain medical insurance benefits for transgender folks. And we actually won that case along with other organizations who were signed onto that lawsuit as well. And then, just open the doors to be able to sit down with our city officials now to try to say, look, this is what our community need. We waited long enough, and how are you going to help us obtain this? So, we're currently working with the mayor's office. Even though there's an interim mayor, we hopefully to continue to get the ball rolling to get the things that we need for our community. And hopefully that the things that we're doing here will be a staple point for the rest of the country to do the same.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's so inspiring to hear you guys talk about like the genesis of it all and the work that you guys have put in for years and years and years. That's awesome. Deity, TBT, I wanted to say hey to you for a second. C1 audiences can definitely recognize you from Wig Out, Greater Good, definitely a C1 fave. Can you speak to us kind of about like those roles and how they kind of shaped you as a theater artist, as now a musical artist, and yeah, your kind of your journey as an artist. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, oh, goodness gracious. I mean, Wig Out was such a moment for me as a person, just because I don't think up until that point in my career, everybody that I had played was a cis person at that point in terms of the roles that I had played. And so having the opportunity to just play this person, just living their truth, confident in existing, and not, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, like no questions about it. That was such a formative experience for me as, then an actor. And it's so funny because I think a lot about like when we're telling stories, like who are they for, right? Like, and I mean that beyond just the idea of audience, although obviously that's inclusive of the idea of audience. But I mean, when we're telling a story, like truly, like for whose benefit are we telling the story? For who to receive something from it, is the story being told? And something that I love about it's, I mean, want to talk about For Us by Us, right? Like both of those plays, like you're talking about a work by the Kirsten Grenage, you're talking about a work by the Terrell Evan McCraney, like, and what I think is so, what I find so just amazing about those, looking at those things, side by side, is that it just speaks to a way that I think when people say representation in the theater, people automatically default to that because they're like, oh, well, theater is an empathetic exercise, right? And it's like, yeah, yes, like your mileage may vary with that. And the reason why I think your mileage may vary with that is I think that if the state of anything, any piece of art is to tell you that humanity exists, it's automatically not, like, it's already failed because humanity exists, or if you should know that humanity exists, and you should not need a piece of art to tell you that. You shouldn't. I think sometimes people think, oh, well, I'll go watch a theater show about this and I'll learn some more about this kind of person because this is a kind of person. Perhaps you will see somebody on that stage that you have never seen in your waking life or is not a part of your immediate circles. But you can't go to the theater to, like, at however old you are, to learn, oh my goodness, trans people are people. Like, no, that's and so when I'm acting in a role, representation is less what I'm focused on, and more what I'm focused on is how am I serving the trans people that need to hear this story right now. You know, I think that I think the idea of representation has been a little bit like commodified versus like what the reality is of just like me make a big to do about seeing yourself on screen. What does it mean to see myself? And that's all fine and dandy. But I'm more interested in how do we tell stories for our own benefit? Like, again, fully and completely for us, by us. I don't really care too much about what anybody else gets out of it. I really don't even care too much about I don't even care too much. I want Black trans things for Black trans people, and I don't care if anybody else, like, it's really not my business if anybody else enjoys what they're watching. Like, I don't actually even care if you watch. That's kind of how I am. I think that there's so much surveillance and there's so much disingenuous, like, trying to, like, learn about a community versus just like letting people who are different from you rock, you know? And sometimes I think that, which is why I'm wary of representation, I think sometimes the theater can get us a little bit in that headspace of like, oh, I'm just going to watch like a little diorama peering over all these people with problems that you would never, ever imagine that you could possibly have, because that's just not the kind of person that you are. We don't care about dioramas. Life's not like that.
I love that you're saying like for us, by us, and the like letting Black trans people thrive. That's basically what you said. And like, I feel like you all three of you and all your different intersections and work, like that is what I perceive from all of your work and what that comes through like really clearly for me. So I love to hear you say that, and especially in art. Like I would love to see, yes, more Black trans people like being centered in the work that they want to showcase. And then speaking about that, speaking about letting Black trans people thrive and like doing the work for you, by you, I kind of want to talk about all your different intersections, all three of you, in your different work. Athena, I wanted to talk to you about working in healthcare and the importance of being a Black trans person in healthcare and in your positions that you've had. Like what, how have you seen your role as being like a necessity, and yeah, how have you navigated that space?
As far as a necessity, I know working in the field that I work in, just as a trans woman, period, is just hard to navigate because you're trying to find doctors who not necessarily understand but are educated in the history of what it is that how trans women identify, the surgeries that they want, the services that they require and or need. And then also understanding that not all trans individuals want surgery. Not all trans individuals want to be on hormones. And you know what I'm saying? And there's a lot to the aspect that a lot of people just don't understand. And so you're helping navigate them through a system that is already hard to navigate through in general. So you're already marginalized if you're Black. So it's already hard to get through the healthcare system being Black. Now take Black and being transgender and add those together, and then try to navigate through a healthcare system already that is bad for you if you're Black. And so I don't say it to be mean, but I always say that some doctors do have God complexes. And I say some because not all doctors are like that, and just think that they just know everything or know it all. And it's that thing of like, just because you can read a book, just because you can get a degree, just because you can get an education, it doesn't mean that you know what you're doing fully until you actually live the experience and or do something with that education and or actually come into contact with what it is that you got the education in. And so it's tedious and aggravating at times, because when I hear the stories of what it is that trans women have had to go through when meeting with doctors or trying to get a doctor's appointment, and the doctor knowing what it is that they're there for and still coming and being ignorant and it's misgendering. It's just like, you know, this person is transgendered. You know, this person is coming in here because they're trying to get on hormones, and you coming in here being in your God complex and still being ignorant. It's like, no matter how many times I can go to my own doctor and or, this is a true example, go to an emergency room at a place that I've been to for 50 million times, for whatever it is, I still come in, and the first question they always ask is, when was the last time you had your menstrual? Did you look at my damn chart? I remember you from the last 15 times that I was here, and this is the same damn thing I said to you the last time. And here we are. When I was 18, 19, in my ignorance, in ballroom being who we were, we consider that to be real. If a doctor came in and asked you, when's the last time you had your menstrual? Work. He didn't clock me. He didn't know that I ate that. But now as I'm older, I'm like, y'all are still doing this? Okay. And so you're looking at all that and dealing with the fact that it's just that ignorance is bliss. You're arguing, you're fighting, you're advocating through a system that just, once again, will not change, because again, the root of it is still the same. And until we get to the root, till we clean it out, till we gut it and actually put change there, it's going to continue to be the same. It's going to continue to hold back. It's going to still continue to push. It's going to still continue to not serve the communities that it actually needs to serve.
Thank you so much. That was so great. And can you speak more to like what a transgender healthcare access coordinator is, and did your own personal experiences like get you to this point and to get into this field? I'm just kind of curious about that.
Okay, so currently as a transgender healthcare access coordinator, the position was created for me so that I could work with the trans health team at Fenway Health and trying to find a way to connect a bridge between them and the provincial team that we have at Fenway Health and the marginalized trans individuals that are seen. So right now, one of the biggest problems at Fenway Health is obtaining and retaining trans employees of color, as well as trans clients of color in general. And so my job, one of my main jobs, is to create a bridge with the trans team there to try and see what we can do about getting some trans individuals in, especially of color, so that they can receive healthcare. And then creating programs, and then also being sure that we're asking questions about the healthcare that they're trying to receive and what that looks like, as well as speaking to those that were trans people of color that were receiving care at Fenway and finding out why they stopped getting care at Fenway and what happened, and then being able to create a space so that that doesn't happen again for individuals that come, as well as trying to get them to come back so that they know that their care is important to Fenway as well.
That's great. Thank you. It's so important to have that position and to have that in the world, hoping that more organizations kind of follow that type of structure. Chastity, I wanted to move to you and talk about Trans Emergency Fund. I know we kind of mentioned it earlier, and if you don't mind like speaking to your job there, what the organization is, and kind of talking about what mutual aid is and why it's so important to trans people.
Absolutely. So as the current director of the Transgender Emergency Fund, it is my job to not only secure funding for our programming, but also to create new programs as well. And to figure out the best way we can provide the best resources and tools for our community for them to be able to be sustainable. And that hence goes into why we're trying to obtain a building to start our transitional housing program, where we will house homeless trans folks for up to 6 months while they're provided the tools and resources needed to be sustainable. Because you go back to, for me, mutual aid is number one, taking care of your community, and also thinking about the different ways that they need taken care of. And one is also speaking to them about what they want. A lot of organizations, they receive grants and all of these things to do with so many different things with subpopulations, but they never reach out to these populations that see exactly how can we help you, how can we best benefit you before we get our needs met. And that's what we try to do here at the Trans Emergency Fund. So like we just conducted a survey that went out to our trans folks across Massachusetts just to see like, what do you want in a shelter? What do you want in a transitional housing program? Because we know what we aren't getting in the city right now. Myself have been turned away from shelters, or when I'm being screened, the first question is, after I acknowledge that I'm trans, how long have you been HIV positive? So it's like, is this a systemic cycle of oppression that is placed on the trans community when we're trying to access these very important essential services? So our program, we try to bridge that gap with them accessing those services, and that's what we would to be able to do for a host of individuals if we had that building. So mutual aid is not only just speaking for your community and working for your community, but it's also like you have to do a lot of behind the scenes work with the politicians and other local organizations. And then as a trans woman of color running the organization, I get a lot of backlash. I have people coming out, do you only serve Black trans women? And it's like, no, we serve trans people of all colors, but we have a greater emphasis on serving trans people of color just because of the different situations that we're placed in. From a trans white woman and a trans Black woman, our backgrounds, our upbringing are two completely different things. So we need different services at times. We need different support at times. And that's why the Transgender Emergency Fund is here. But I have to make sure I reiterate that fact that we do serve everyone if you qualify for the services that you are seeking. And I think it's very important for everybody in our community, especially the Black community, to get involved with the Transgender Emergency Fund. That's a gap that we're trying to bridge as well, is why is it that trans folks, especially trans people of color, are so disowned from our own community? That's something that's been an ongoing factor way before I was even here. But the point of the matter is, it's time to bring it to the forefront and to the forelight, because it can help save our lives, and we can do a hell of a lot more together than we can do apart. So when I think about mutual aid, it's kind of crazy because I think about, okay, I'm doing that in my trans community, but in the Black community as a whole, I'm not seeing that. So hopefully that's a gap that we hopefully can bridge as well.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to hear you speak about that. This is just a reminder to everybody who's watching. We're receiving a wealth of knowledge from our panelists right now. And just as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and we'll be more than happy to answer them. TBT, I'm going to move to you, and I'd love for you to speak kind of culturally. I mean, we've talked about like healthcare, we've talked about like mutual aid, we've talked about all these different intersections in Boston specifically. Like, you as a musical artist, can you kind of speak to what it's been like kind of jumpstarting your career and transitioning to music, and yeah, just kind of the culture here in Boston?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's funny trying to be a rap girl up here. Just because I think that Boston, as a city, has such a interesting relationship to music, that it perceives. Well, okay, that's a lot of words that I was about to use to say that I think that Boston finds music that is made by Black people to be basically noise. So I'll simplify and say that instead. And so it can be a little bit of, it can be difficult. I mean, the way that I find the American music industry to function in general, I think is hostile to Black trans people. I don't think that the way that it works is set up for somebody like me to be functioning within it. And that's fine, insofar that I am an independent artist. And that's something that for me has been very, very important from jump. I mean, even before I was a musical artist, I knew that that was going to be just a cornerstone of who I am artistically. And now, I am a musical artist and I'm self-publishing everything. Everything I'm putting out is by myself. I don't find that labels and such, there's all these stories about labels and what labels do and how and the deals and the contracts and this, that, and the stuff, all that stuff. I bypass all of that myself, just because you look, and I mean, unfortunately, situations like what would happen with Megan Thee Stallion last year make it very clear that it's some people in the industry who have very specific ideas about what a woman in the industry is supposed to be for them. And that kind of person is not the kind of person that I want to be having any kind of conversations with, because it's just ridiculousness. I think that there's a way that the American music industry is so focused on sexualizing everything, that's why you can't ever see the girls winning, or it's always drama, or it's always whatever. There's always something. And I just think that, yeah, but I think that because of all that, I have to be very, very intentional about the path that I choose to carve for myself, which is why I'm very proud to be an independent artist. You ain't never gonna see me signing to nobody's label because it's not even worth my time.
Thank you. Great. It's been really awesome kind of talking about kind of like the groundwork and the foundation of like what it's like to be a Black trans woman in Boston and the systemic issues that we've talked about. But I would love to also talk about some moments of joy. And you as Black trans women, like what are the moments of joy that you have found both here in Boston as a community, both nationally? Like what are the moments that you want to celebrate and lift up?
For me, it would definitely be, well, two things. First and foremost, the march last year. That was such an experience that I will never ever forget. I remember being on stage and I couldn't even get my words out at first. I had to let some tears out first before I could even get to my speech. But the fact of seeing community together, it really gave me a push to do what I know I needed to do. At this time last year, I was working 3+ jobs to support myself. And, I had to take a leap of faith and, I'm going to do TEF full time and, to be able to provide for my community. And so being able to actually do what I do is what brings me joy the most in Boston, because there's no program like ours in New England that are providing direct services, homelessness prevention, rental startup, nutrition support, personal supply support, transportation to your medical appointments, prescription co-pays. There's no organization that are doing this. So it gives me joy to be able to do this. And my hope is that younger trans folks are looking up to me as to be like, you know what, I can do this too. I can take on this work. I could be a lawyer. I could be a doctor. I could be anything that I want to be. Because I don't plan on doing this work forever. So I hope that, laws change. So first and foremost, that the work that I'm doing now, some of the things don't have to be done. They can be focused on just living their lives as the beautiful trans people that they are. But then also having people who still want to be activists and making sure that things get changed can be changed all the time. Laws get changed all the time, and make sure that the laws that we fight for and get in place stay in place. And I just find that very important, and doing this work gives me that joy.
Yeah, I think I have to go with something similar. Last year, amidst everything that was going on in the summertime, um, a fellow artist and we got together with Organizing Collective and put on the Boston Black Trans Pride March. And that was definitely it was constructed to be essentially a big moment of joy, specifically of celebrating. It was a moment of celebration because I found during that moment, me and my friend, we were just so sick of seeing trans people being defined by our death. And we just were like, we cannot be FaceTiming each other crying about this all day, every day. Like, what can we do? And so we got people together to just literally uplift and celebrate and center and love all of that, just to literally focus on us as we are still here, you know? And that was a great moment. That was a great moment. I mean, that was like it was very low key. It got like more press than I think the event necessarily like needed. But it was very just like local, it like very like people that I have come to know and come to call myself to like in community with, over now my 6 years of living in Boston, just fellow Black trans folks, getting together and celebrating ourselves because we got to do it, because we know ain't nobody else gonna do it.
Athena, I don't know if you want. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yes,
I
I
was
would.
going to piggyback off of what Chastity said, thinking about the march. So at the end of the march, when we first got to Dudley, Chastity was on the loudspeaker, whatever the things is called, the megaphone. And she was talking and she looked at me and she said, "Do you want to say something?" And I turned to her and I was like, "Not right now," because I was in such an emotional state and overwhelmed by joy just to see the outcome. So as we get to the police station, you can look to your left and you can look to your right and you can just see the crowd still just like coming. And then as we are leaving, I remember, and just thinking about it makes me emotional real quick because it just was a powerful moment. I remember as me and her are leaving, because I don't know about her, but my feet was burning. But because she is much smaller than I am. So maybe her feet were like, this was a good power walk, but my feet was like, listen, big mama, you ain't never done nothing like this before, and you better not try this shit again for another 6 months. But I know that I'm walking and I'm like, whew, my feet are burning. And I remember stopping and turning, and a massive amount of people are on their knees, and then other people are clapping. And so, not, ignoring them and stuff like that. And we're walking, and one of my friends turns to me and says, they're doing this for y'all. And I stopped and looked at Chastity and, looped my arm around hers as we're standing there. And we just looked, and it was like, not that we're not deserving, not that we're not, people who don't mind being honored, but we're just so humbled. We're two humbled individuals and just were like in shock that this is actually happening. Like, for little old us, we are the same people as y'all. We will be out here fighting for y'all, standing next to y'all, and we are amazed that you all want to take the time to do this for us, because we don't do this for accolades. We don't do this to get rich. We don't do this to be seen. We do this because we know what it is to not know where you're going to lay your head at tomorrow. We know what it means to actually stand and just want to be living in your truth, and have people who don't necessarily understand use their ignorance to help make sure that you don't get further in the life that it is that you want to live. We understand what it means to not know where your next meal is coming from. We know what it is to feel like we're degrading ourselves to be sure that we'll be able to eat. We know what it means. We know exactly what it means to go into a doctor's office just trying just to be who we are and being discouraged. We know what it means to be used by a place that you have worked at for so long, that has drained you, that has abused you, and now that you're tired, the first thing they say is that you're burnt out. But do you know how I got here? Trying to build your office, trying to build your stabilization so that you all can look good. And now we get thrown away as a community. Excuse me.
You got this, girl. And just to continue on where I know she was going, is that we have to stop letting these organizations who just want to hire us to fulfill a grant, or just want us to come through their doors to fill a grant and offer us a slice of pizza for HIV test. Like, we say no more. Like, we are so tired of the ongoing rhetoric of trans women need to sit in the corner and we use them when we need them. We are tired of being tokenized. And that's why I can't, I know she said we're not in it for the money, but one thing, I am in it for the money because I need the money to be able to help my community. So I am out there searching for donors and searching for any type of funds that I can get to help enlighten my community, because we have to do it for us. If nobody else is going to do it, we have to do it. We're tired of asking for a seat at a table, so we created our own table. And I think that's what we need to continue to do.
Thank you. Excuse me. Ooh. But yeah, that's just so that is why we do what we do, because I'm also in an emotional state too, because today was my godmom's funeral and everything too, so it just has me a lot thinking, and then also dealing with what I'm dealing with my own job, and feeling a type of way and realizing, and so again, saying what Chastity said, we're not in for it for the money as far as for ourselves. We're in it for the money to be sure that our community will have a tomorrow, and realizing that people need to understand that we're just human beings like everybody else. I wake up just like you wake up. I use the bathroom just like you use the bathroom. I get breakfast like you get breakfast. I mind my business like you should mind your business. But that's just like that's just it's disheartening, because it's like people think that just because you're allowed to have an opinion that you should give it. Just because you're allowed to have one doesn't mean that everyone needs to know what your opinion is. Because if you know nothing on the subject matter, why are you giving your opinion? That's like me going into a mechanical shop and trying to give my 2 cents. No, I know nothing about how cars work. Yet you coming to me telling me how it is that I should live as a lady. I'll give you a prime example. Somebody said to one of my gay sons, you're light skinned and have privilege. And she's a cisgender straight woman. You just told a gay man just because he's light skinned that he has privilege. I think you have completely lost your mind, because the first part is that he's gay, already marginalized, regardless if he's light skinned, regardless of what, he's gay. So he's already marginalized, and he's Black at the end of the day. He's marginalized. And it's that thing where people take their initiative to give their opinion and speak upon stuff that they know nothing about. And in this community, that's one thing that has to stop. We have to come together at the end of the day, and I'm ending with this. At the end of the day, as I said in the video, and I always say to friends, family, if we come together as a community and continue to fight, there's nothing that we can't overcome and or accomplish. And that's it.
Wow. Thank you guys so much for all just being so vulnerable and being able to speak truthfully. I'm really grateful for all of you. And I know many people in the chat were, so I'm gonna definitely make sure that you guys have access to that. But just wanted to express my gratitude in this moment to all of you. In our final question, I know we're running a little bit on time, but we started a little late, so I'm gonna milk it a little bit. But speaking directly to other Black trans people, maybe someone who was a young kid or someone who has just come out, what advice would you give, and what would you say speaking directly to that person or to a younger version of yourself?
I would say, look, don't waste time trying to get picked and chose by these people. Do not waste time trying to get picked and chose by these people. There's so much about what we just finished discussing that made me think about just like how everything, so much of what I could ever offer myself, a past version of myself, a younger trans person, like it always comes back to how they want to tokenize us. It always comes back to how they want to tokenize us, because at the end of the day, if we are tokenized, like there are some schools of thought, right, that, oh well, you know, like we're there were some schools of thought that will see that as a positive. And it is strongly my belief that if you interact with me like I am a god, you're still not interacting with me like I'm a person. So I don't understand why we're like, this is not Chuck E. Cheese. Get that token stuff out of here. Like, I don't care about any of that, because I am a person and I'm here for you to interact with me like I'm a person. So you treating me like I'm the dirt that you walk on, that's not gonna fly. You treating me like I am like the Holy Trinity, that's also not gonna do anything for me. That's not gonna help me at all. Because at the end of the day, we are losing our lives. That's a human thing. We're being murdered. We're having our lives ended. Okay? Let's not lose sight of the fact that all this stuff is happening to human people. So don't try to be anything. Don't try to be any of that. Don't try to be that token for them. You're not gonna get anything out of it. That's my advice.
If I had to give advice to my younger self, I would say listen, for the first 6 months, be the keynote speaker at the Bed Rest and Breakfast, meet Chastity. And in those 6 months, you and her work on creating a space for us, by us, for yourselves. Do not waste your time helping others build up their stuff just so they can throw you away later. Do not waste your time with frivolous and trying to survive while supporting others, because you're going to make it. You'll be okay at the end of the day. At the end of the day, you and her together are going to be okay, because you are called for a purpose in this season. Don't worry about what others are going to say. Don't worry about what others are going to think. Don't worry about the naysayers. You just got to push, and you just got to continue to walk. You got to continue to run, and not worry about what it is that others are going to say. There are times that you're going to feel tired. There are times that you're going to feel sad. There are times that you're going to feel down. There are times you're going to feel happy, but just continue to keep pushing and know that it's for a greater cause.
And for me, to my younger self, or someone who is, you know, just discovering who they are and are starting this journey called transitioning, stay true to yourself, follow your heart, be open to yourself and be honest about to yourself. I think I spent so many years struggling with myself about who I am that I wasted a lot of valuable time. So do not waste time. Time flies. Feel like just yesterday I was 15 and I'm like closer to 40 than I am to 20 now. So you have to put in the work so you can enjoy the fruits of your labor, and just know that you can be whatever you want to be. Do not let us be subject to sex work and McDonald's and retail. You can be whoever you want to be. You can be the business owner. And I just want our younger selves to think about generational wealth. Something that I know I didn't think about, I didn't even know what the hell it was at the age of 20. So just start thinking about generational wealth and just think about what you want for the future and for yourself and for your kids if you choose to have them. And what do you want for your life? I think that's the most important, is to be able to answer that question and to follow through.
Amazing, amazing, amazing. Thank you for all your wonderful insight. And now we got an amazing performance to close us out, y'all. TBT is going to be performing for us, and I think we're going to get a little sneak preview of what's to come. So I'm going to hand it over to TBT, but thank you so much, Chastity and Athena.
All right. Yeah. So I'm going to give y'all just a little bit of a sneak preview of my debut album, Cyberbully, which is coming out next week, next Friday, March 26th. Woo! And here we go. Throw it back, ain't no nothing about that. Bitch, I'm trending because I'm trans and my bars don't lack. Throw it. Actually, could you turn me up a little bit? I can't hear myself. Okay, that's great. Can you turn it back? Throw it back, ain't no nothing about that. Bitch, I'm trending because I'm trans and my bars don't lack. Throw it back, ain't no nothing about that. Bitch, I'm trending because I'm trans and my bars don't lack. Check the trending, it's your money, making money because the girls. I'm a penny, but my penny, eat the pennies for the girl. Wait, cause I'm straight and I'm curls. TBTBS, the soy boy joy toy. Fuck it in a Rolls Royce. Selfish, color coy. Look it up a LaCroix. I'm selfish, you bitches is shrimp. We're not the grade, you get ready to sim. Ha! December babe, born ice up. Billy bitches on my birthday like a birthday push up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. For that, hey, that's a minute, then I count for 8. 24 years ain't shit. Wait 12 months, no job. And my taxes came late. Not a rent. Do your phone died, nigga. Fuck that. I'm trying to 20 down in taxes. Great Lord. I just want to think the name, obsessed. Some TBT like the rest. One gets who made gender, the West. Yo, people, no mess. Back in and nothing about that. Cause I'm trying to some trans and my bars don't lack. Back in and nothing about that. Cause I'm trying to some trans and my bars don't lack. Trying to get your name with the really cut the pearls. I'm like, I need to eat the pennies for the girl. By the way, cause I'm straight and I'm curls. TBT, BS, the TBT on a track, time to throw it back. Got some white trains mad because I'm trans and black, and they want to be me, but they couldn't handle that because they see something can have a panic attack. What's that? You want to tell me how to rap? I know, some of you bitches like that. On a live stage rack, I told a hater eat my ass. That's a really nice snack. Academy lost me, industry looking. Don't give a damn about neither unless they booking. Front like friendly. Oh, hey, they put my face up on combat tokens, stressing every day, so I spend them all token. But I ain't housebroken, I'm too outspoken. Not paid for my surgery, I need my ass poking. Throw it back, ain't no nothing about that. Bitch, I'm telling cause I'm trans and my bars don't lack. Throw it back, ain't no nothing about that. Bitch, I'm telling cause I'm trans and my bars don't lack. Chubby Tranny, it's your nanny, make your granny cut the pearls. Mama Fanny, let my cranny eat the pennies for the girls. Play away, cause I'm straight and I'm curls. TBTBS the world. Come on. Chubby Tranny, but I ain't no trap. Real bitch body with a built-in strap. The boots come off when I hit, but always stay on while I rock a new set. Amazing. All right, Mads, I'm just going to say, because I can hear that we've got some problems with the connection here, and I'm fighting the beat a little bit. So we can call it here. in terms of the performance.
It was still dope no matter what. Don't you worry about it. It was fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you to TBT for closing out the evening for us in that way. What an amazing conversation. Thank you all so much. And thank you to our guest. Thank you for joining us for episode 2 of our second season of the C1 Better Future series. For more information and resources and action steps, because that's what we need you to take, action steps, please visit us at company1.org/betterfuture. If you enjoyed the program, and of course you did, please consider making a donation to Company One Theater in order to support our upcoming events, or purchase an act of joy. There's going to be more information about that in the chat. To donate, please visit company1.org. That link is also in the description and in the chat for this video. Lastly, we will also be dropping a link to a survey in the comments section. Please let us know about your experience with our program this evening. Thank you again to our panelists. Thank you for closing us out, TVT. Thank you to our interpreters. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Better future.
What's next? What you want? 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 What's next?